Start investing $300 a month at 25, and you could retire with around $787,000. Wait until 35, and that same $300 a month leaves you with just $366,000. Same monthly amount, a 10-year delay, and it costs you more than $420,000. That gap doesn't come from earning more, picking some genius stock, or taking on huge risk. Both of these people invest the exact same amount, the exact same way. The only thing that changed was when they started. And that single decision, to begin 10 years earlier, ends up worth more than double the money at the finish line. This is the power of compound interest, and it's probably the most important concept in all of long-term investing. The good news is it's not complicated, and you don't need a finance degree to use it. So here's exactly what you'll get in the next few minutes. First, I'll explain what compound interest actually is and why it behaves like a snowball rolling downhill. Then we'll walk through a real side-by-side example with exact dollar figures so you can watch the magic happen decade by decade. After that, I'll show you the 5 most common mistakes that quietly kill people's returns and how to avoid every single one. No jargon, no fluff. Let's get into it. So let's start with the basics. What is compound interest really? Imagine you put $1,000 into an account that earns 10% a year. After year 1, you've earned $100, so now you have $1,100. Simple enough. But here's where it gets interesting. In year 2, you don't just earn 10% on your original $1,000. You earn 10% on the whole $1,100. That's $110. Now you've got $1,210. In year 3, you earn 10% on that, which is $121. Notice what's happening. Every year, you're earning interest not just on the money you put in, but on the interest you already earned. Your interest starts earning its own interest. That's compound interest in one sentence. Your money makes money, and then that money makes money too. Now compare that to simple interest, where you'd only ever earn 10% on your original $1,000, a flat $100 every single year forever. Over a few years, the difference looks tiny, but stretch it out over decades and the gap becomes enormous. This is why people call compounding a snowball. Picture a tiny snowball at the top of a long hill. At first, it rolls slowly and barely grows. But as it picks up snow, it gets bigger. And a bigger snowball grabs even more snow with every turn. By the bottom of the hill, it's massive. And almost all of that size came in the final stretch. Your investments work the exact same way. In the early years, the growth feels painfully slow. You might invest for 5 years and think, this isn't doing much. But the snowball is just getting started. The real explosion happens later. And that's the key insight this entire video hinges on. The longer your money stays invested, the more those final, powerful years get to work for you. Time isn't just a factor in compounding. Time is the engine. Here's a quick mental shortcut to feel how powerful this is. It's called the Rule of 72. Take the number 72 and divide it by your annual return, and you get roughly how many years it takes your money to double. So, at 10%, 72 divided by 10 is about 7 years to double. At 7%, it's a little over 10 years. So watch what that means. If you're 25 and you invest at 7%, your money could double by 35, double again by 45, again by 55, and again by 65. That's 4 doublings. $1 becomes roughly 16. But if you start at 35, you only get 3 doublings, and that same dollar becomes about 8. Same money, half the result, simply because you gave it 1 fewer doubling. Hold on to that idea, because it's about to come to life with real numbers. All right, Let's make this real with actual people and actual numbers. Meet Marcus. Marcus is 25. He just landed his first real job, and he decides to invest $300 a month into a simple, broad index fund. For this example, we'll assume an average return of 7% a year, a common long-term assumption for the stock market. It's not guaranteed. Some years are up 20%, some years are down. But over decades, 7% is a reasonable, realistic number to plan with. Marcus invests that $300 a month, every month, from 25 until he retires at 65. That's 40 years. Over those 40 years, the total amount of his own money that he puts in is $144,000. So how much does he retire with? About $787,000. Stop and look at that. He contributed $144,000, but he retires with nearly $790,000. That means more than $640,000 of his final balance is pure growth, money the market paid him on top of what he put in. He more than quintupled his contributions just by staying invested. And here's where you really see the snowball. Watch how Marcus's balance accelerates decade by decade. By 35, after 10 years, he has about $52,000. By 45, it's grown to roughly $156,000. By 55, about $366,000. And by 65, $787,000. Look at that final decade. From 55 to 65, his balance jumped by over $420,000. That single last decade grew more than the first 3 decades combined. That's the snowball hitting the bottom of the hill. Now meet Sarah. Sarah is identical to Marcus in every way, with one exception. She waits. Life gets busy, she figures she'll start later, and she finally begins at 35. From 35 to 65, she invests the same $300 a month at the same 7%. That's 30 years. Her total contributions come to $108,000, and she retires with about $366,000. So let's put them side by side. Marcus started 10 years earlier and ended with $787,000. Sarah started 10 years later and ended with $366,000. That's a difference of $421,000. Now here's the part most people get wrong. They assume Marcus came out ahead because he simply put in more money. And yes, he did put in more, but only $36,000 more. That extra $36,000 he contributed over those 10 years turned into an extra $421,000 at the finish line. The head start wasn't worth the money he put in. It was worth more than 10 times that, because that early money had the most time to compound. But I promised you something stranger, so let's go further. Meet Jake. Jake invests $300 a month starting at 25, but only for 10 years. At 35, he completely stops. He never adds another single dollar. He just leaves what he has alone and lets it grow until 65. In total, Jake only ever contributes $36,000. Meanwhile, Sarah keeps investing the full 30 years, putting in $108,000, 3 times as much as Jake. So who ends up with more? It shouldn't even be close, right? Sarah invested 3 times the money for 3 times as long. But when they both reach 65, Jake has about $421,000 and Sarah has about $366,000. Jake wins. He invested for 10 years and quit. Sarah invested for 30 years and never stopped. And Jake still comes out ahead by roughly $55,000, having contributed 1/3 of what she did. Read that again because it rewrites how most people think about money. It was never really about how much you invest. The dominant force is how long that money gets to compound. Jake's 10 years of contributions started so early that they outgrew Sarah's 30. That's the entire lesson of this video in one example. So by now, the lesson is obvious. Start early. But knowing that and actually doing it are two different things. So let's talk about the 5 most common mistakes that quietly destroy people's compounding and exactly how to avoid each one. Mistake number 1, and by far the most expensive, waiting to start. The most common thing people say is, "I'll begin once I'm earning more," or "once I've paid off this thing," or "once life calms down." But remember Marcus and Sarah. What cost Sarah $400,000 wasn't a bad move in the market. It was simply 10 years of waiting. Time is the one ingredient in compounding you can never buy back later. A 25-year-old is holding something a 35-year-old would pay a fortune for, and most of them don't even realize it. The fix is simple. Start now, today, with whatever you can. An imperfect amount invested today beats a perfect amount invested in 5 years. Mistake number 2. Thinking you need a lot of money to begin. People assume investing is for people with thousands of dollars lying around, so they wait for some big lump sum that never quite arrives. But look at our example. Marcus didn't start with a fortune. He started with $300 a month. Even if all you can manage right now is $50 or $100, that's not too small to matter. Because of compounding, a small amount started early can outgrow a large amount started late. The number you begin with matters far less than the fact that you begin. Mistake number 3. Interrupting the snowball. Compounding only works if you leave it alone. The most common way people sabotage themselves is by pulling money out early or panic selling the moment the market drops. Here's why that's so damaging. Remember that most of compounding's power shows up in the final years. If you cash out in year 10 because you got nervous, you don't just lose a little, you amputate the entire explosive phase that was about to happen. Markets will fall, sometimes 30 or 40%. That's normal and it's expected. The investors who win are usually just the ones who didn't sell. Staying invested through the scary times is often the single most profitable thing you'll ever do. Mistake number 4. Chasing flashy returns instead of staying consistent. When people finally get excited about compounding, they often go hunting for some investment that'll double overnight. They jump from hot tip to hot tip and take wild risks trying to get rich fast. But our entire example only assumed a steady 7%. There's nothing exotic about it. Consistency, boring as it sounds, is what makes the math work. A reliable 7% that you actually stick with for decades will crush a thrilling 20% that you chase, panic over, and abandon. Mistake number 5, and this one's sneaky, ignoring fees. Fees compound against you the same way returns compound for you. Picture 2 investors on that same $700,000 path. One pays a fund fee of 0.1% a year. The other pays 2% a year, which doesn't sound like much. But over 40 years, that seemingly small fee can quietly eat a 6-figure chunk out of your final balance. The lesson isn't to obsess over every penny. It's to actually know what you're being charged. Because a small percentage, compounded over a lifetime, is anything but small. Low-cost, broad index funds exist largely for this reason. If this is starting to click, if you're realizing that time might be the most valuable asset you have right now, then this channel is built for you. I publish straightforward, no-hype videos on the fundamentals of long-term investing, how to actually get started, how to build a simple portfolio, how to manage risk, and how to keep your emotions from wrecking your returns. None of it assumes you're already an expert. So if you want to keep building on what you learned today, go ahead and hit subscribe and tap the bell so the next one finds you. It genuinely helps the channel grow, and it makes sure these videos show up for you when they drop. So here's the one thing I want you to walk away with, above everything else. It was never mainly about how much money you invest. The real engine of wealth is how long that money gets to compound. Marcus, Sarah, and Jake all invested the same $300 a month at the same 7%. The only thing that separated a $360,000 retirement from an $800,000 one was time. Which means the best moment to start was years ago, and the second best moment is today. If you found this helpful, the natural next step is our video on how to open your first investment account and pick a simple starter portfolio, plus the one on why most beginners panic sell at the worst possible time and how to avoid it. I'll see you in the next one. And that's a wrap on today's topic. If you found this helpful, be sure to hit like and subscribe so you never miss a lesson. Have a question about what we cover today? Drop it in the comments below. I'll be answering the best one. If you want to dive even deeper, click on this next video right here, where we explore next topic. Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.